Hello, 2025. And in the last couple of months, I've gone from being an old lady who thinks she's working pretty well on her health and keeping fit and keeping out of doctor's surgeries and hospitals, etc., to being an old lady with multiple comorbidities and loads of medications. But hey, carry on regardless, eh? Granny Greensocks, flying backwards through a world of delusion towards truth. So it kind of started last November when I was checking my blood pressure, which I had been doing on and off for about 5 years. It had gone up and down and it had been pointed out to me. So obviously you want to be aware of what's going on in your body. And it seemed to be gradually going up. And then one day I woke up and I took my blood pressure and it was like 200 and something, 211 over 90, I don't know, it was just very high. I'm terrible with numbers, I just don't remember, but it was far higher than it ought to have been. So I went to, well, I didn't go to the doctor, I phoned the surgery and I waited for half an hour in a queue to get hold of a receptionist, and then I was kind of fobbed off a bit and told, oh, well, you can come and see the practice nurse and all that stuff. They are so overworked in the NHS, you wouldn't believe it. I don't know how they carry on, they're such noble souls. And they're constantly trying to find ways of streamlining and making it more efficient, which inevitably involves not seeing patients face to face, etc. But they do it. And full marks to them. I just wish somebody would give them the money and the staff to do a proper job. Anyway, so that's by the by. I finally got to see the practice nurse who told me my blood pressure was too high, which I knew. She tried to listen to my heart and she said, have you got a heart murmur? And I said, not that I know of. She said, I can't hear your heartbeat properly. It's probably because of the high blood pressure. We'll check it again when the blood pressure goes down, which of course nobody ever got around to doing at that point. But that was a bit startling, although I had been aware that, you know, in my own mind, there was something not quite right with my heart, because I'd occasionally get these kind of burbling feelings in there. And they had been becoming more frequent of late. And once I got high blood pressure, it was more or less continuous, which was a bit scary. And she took blood, and the blood went off. And a week later, I was due back to have a what do they call it? Cardiogram, electrocardiogram. And I had the electrocardiogram with a nice nurse. And I said, well, am I going to find out about the other things? It's been a week since I had the blood taken. And oh, she said, and she looked at everything. And she went out of the room, and she came back and said, you can go and see the doctor. So I went to see the doctor. And the doctor said, actually, your red blood cell count is really high. And I suspect you've got this rare blood cancer called polycythemia. And the hospital wants us to check it again. So I had to wait another week for them to check it again. And it was all a bit slow. And all this time, my head was practically exploding, and I don't know if it was the thick blood from too many red blood cells or the high blood pressure, because it took about 2 weeks for the blood pressure medication to take effect. And my heart's burbling away the whole time and jumping and juddering, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to die of a heart attack if nothing else. But anyway, I didn't. I survived. And I got to see the consultant at the hospital in the haematology department in fairly short order, which is quite impressive. When you hear that people who have suspected cancer have to wait months and months just to get it checked out, I was probably lucky not only to get a cancer that is controllable, but also one that is fairly easy to discover and to control. So what they do is they send off a sample to King's Hospital in London, and they check for a genetic mutation called JAK2, which is indicative of this condition, and it's usually the cause of the condition. The condition itself is supposed to be fairly rare. As soon as I was aware of the high blood pressure way back, I was thinking, oh my God, I don't want to go on blood pressure medication. I've got to find a way to control this. I must do that exercise. And I kind of made friends with my rowing machine. Actually, it's Chris's rowing machine. He was the one who decided we should have one. He did all the research and he said, Everybody says that the best overall exercising machine is a rowing machine. I was actually thinking more of a cross trainer for myself, but anyway, we got the rowing machine 5-6 years ago, before COVID. And I did use it a few times at that point, but I soon gave up. It was hard to motivate myself. But the thought of dying of high blood pressure does motivate one somewhat. So since then, I've developed a new routine of rowing 20 minutes twice a day, sometimes a little bit less, but every single day I have to do that rowing. And it's awful. You know, my arms and legs ache. It may be that I have fatigue from the blood condition, but whatever. I always had a very weak system, never had much energy. I row and I make myself do it. I try and make it interesting by seeing how far I've gone and sometimes checking out my eyesight on the chart. The machine is made by a company called Topion, and it uses water resistance, which is quite fun because you can hear the water sloshing as though you're really rowing on water. It does get a bit green though from the sunlight. And of course I try and mitigate the torture by listening to music. This one is Catherine Tickell. It's my very favourite track of hers, Bill Charlton's Fancy. And the blood pressure did eventually come down a fair amount. It was quite slow. But what really seemed to affect it the most was having blood taken. So the initial treatment for polycythemia vera is because you've got too many red blood cells in your system, it's clogging everything up, and probably it's got to contribute to high blood pressure, although they say there's no relationship. And so I think I was just particularly lucky to get it caught at the same time as I was being investigated for the blood pressure. What happens when they take blood, they take I think it's 500 millilitres, about a pint of blood out of you. And this thins the blood down. Of course, it thins down everything, not just the red blood cells, because you can't distinguish, which is unfortunate, but better than nothing. And I found that my blood pressure certainly went down noticeably after having blood taken, which you'd expect, because if you've got thick blood and your heart's struggling away, trying to pump it around your system, then your blood pressure will go up. It makes sense to me, anyway. So it makes sense that if you make your blood a bit thinner, then your blood pressure will go down. I've had 2 bloodlettings and I've been put on various medications. So let me show you my medications. This one, actually, this is what I was taking already, vitamin D and K2, because I spend my time watching videos on YouTube and various people say, oh, you have to have vitamin D, otherwise you're susceptible to all kinds of infections. And various other people say, and you should take vitamin K2 with it because that helps the absorption. Well, other people say, no, you shouldn't take K2 with it. But anyway, this is what I've got, so this is what I'm taking. Then I have the canidipine. And this is for the blood pressure. And then I have dispersible aspirin. And that is to preempt blood clots. And then I have, I only got this yesterday, hydroxycarbamide. And this is the chemotherapy tablet. And with it I have metoclopramide, which I haven't taken. This is just in case I get nauseous from the chemotherapy, which I am told most people don't get side effects from. And I haven't noticed any yet, but I'm just waiting to see. When I went to see the haematology consultant at the hospital, I did mention the rumoured heart murmur, and after listening to my chest, she said, yes, you do have something. She wrote it on the report as a soft systolic murmur, and she said I should probably have an echocardiogram, so I shall wait on that. That might actually take months or years because they are also so stressed and strained at the seams, but I'm not really that bothered about it. One of the things I was asked was whether I had lost weight recently, and this was a bit confusing to me because I had lost weight, but I had intended to lose weight. because I was focusing on the little pad of fat over my viscera, which you're supposed to eliminate. There's good fat and there's bad fat. The good fat is around your bum and your hips and your thighs, which is good for you, but the one on your belly is supposed to be bad. So that was my aim. I'd been trying to get rid of it. When I went back home and weighed myself, I'd always been 8 stone, and I found I'd gone down to 7 stone. Now, this was a shock to me. I would have been happy with 7.5, but 7 stone? And then Chris weighed himself, and he said, well, I've lost half a stone as well. And I thought, well, maybe it's the scales. They're a bit old. I'll buy some new scales. So I bought some new scales, and hey presto, we found that we could both gain 7 pounds just by stepping on the new scales. So that was kind of a relief, because you don't want to fade away, do you? I am following a fairly conscious way of eating, which I may talk about in my next video because I've whittled on enough. So happy days, look after yourself, don't forget to check your blood pressure just in case. See you later, bye.